We can open this meeting. Let's see, this is the Town of Richmond Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, July 16th, 2025. Welcome, everybody. Aaron, thank you for being here to record the meeting. That's great. Chris, Ian, Mark, back from the wilds of Alaska, and Rebecca.
Hello.
Oh, great. Good to see everybody. Okay, so we're going to look at the agenda briefly and see if that's what we want to be doing and see if there's any public comment about non-agenda items. So we have two items on our agenda. One of them, they're both actually to do with bringing our ordinance up to the standards of Act 47 and 181, passed in 2023 and 24. They are the areas in the water and sewer district that we need to make sure they align with those new laws. So that's what we're going to talk about, begin discussion on the village commercial district, which is the Railroad Street area, and then talk about making some small, simple changes to the residential commercial district in the village. That shouldn't be too arduous because we redid that recently. We just have to put in a couple of things to make it compatible with Act 47 and 181. So anybody want to do anything more, less, different?
Sounds good.
Okay, not hearing anything, we'll continue with the posted agenda. And we're going to look at the minutes of our July 2nd meeting. Does anyone have any comments, additions, corrections, anything you want to say about the minutes of the July 2nd meeting? Okay, I'm assuming that you've all looked at them and that they all seem good. So not hearing any comments or seeing any hands, we will accept those minutes as written into the record.
I'm sorry, just one quick question.
Yes.
Members absent, it has me and Rebecca and one vacancy. What happened to
Brighton?
Brighton resigned?
Yes.
Wasn't able to maintain that's too bad.
Yeah, he felt
Had an
that
interesting perspective.
he was finding the steering committee work too much for the town plan because he's trying to pay for graduate school and work and go to graduate school anyway. So he resigned from the planning commission, worked on the steering committee for another month, and now he's resigning from the steering committee. That's also too much work.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, so it is too bad. It was a
more
different point of view. So, yeah. So we will have a search. I don't know if we've advertised yet. Keith, have we looked for another planning commission member? Maybe Duncan has mentioned it. I don't know.
No, we have not.
Okay, so
That comes after finding a zoning administrator, right, Keith?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There is a priority list, that's for sure, Mark.
yeah, that's on the top of the list. The assistant zoning administrator. Keith is going to remain the zoning administrator to make the final decisions, but looking for a person who can be trained up as an assistant and hopefully eventually in a couple of years be ready to be the zoning administrator. So
sounds like a great game plan.
that's the game plan. Yep. And I think, and Keith has done a couple of interviews. You can correct me, Keith, on that if you want, and is doing some more interviews.
Yep. We got 2 interviews on our first round, both begged off. I have 3 candidates right now. One I'm very hot on. It's from Buffalo and has a master's in planning. And this would be his first gig out of college, which is actually a really good gig to have to introduce yourself to the planning world, or the planning nightmare, whichever way you want to look at it.
So if anybody has any places for this person to live, that would be good.
All right.
So, all right. So, all right. Let us move on to item number 4. Discussion of Act 47 and 181 in relation to the Village Commercial District. So just by way of introduction, and we did talk briefly about this, we had originally a few years ago planned to finish out the rewrite of the village districts and then move outwards from that. So this is fitting in with that. It is also, making it compatible with Act 47 and 181, which we're going to talk about why it's relevant in a minute. And also more particularly about this district. As we were working with the PUD section for some of these other projects like Jolena Court, we found that there's an inconsistency between two statements in the PUD section 5.12 relative to the Village Commercial District. So it's important that we don't have both of those statements in there, because from an administrative point of view, it's a nightmare. You don't know which one to go with. So we're going to sort of lead off with that. And then we'll talk a little bit more about some other changes that we might want to make based upon Acts 47 and 181. So if you want to look at the PUD section, and maybe we could share that, Keith?
Give me a second. So,
And this is not anything that we did to the PUD section. This was in the PUD section from way back when. So it just hasn't been a problem, and it, for all we know, may never be a problem, but it's best not to have inconsistencies. So if you look at the PUD section 5.12, and you go to the general conditions 5.12.2, and you look at B. So in B, it says a PUD, but not a residential PUD, shall be allowed in the JC and the VD districts. Now, on Monday, the Select Board is going to have its final public hearing about the JC district, which you remember from way back when, earlier in 2025, they're getting around to having their final public hearing. And we will be removing the JC from that statement, because we are allowing them in their building 2 and beyond to have a fully residential building. There's not going to be any commercial requirement, assuming it's approved on Monday, on the ground floor as we had originally had for JC. So that will be changed as of Monday. But what we're looking at.
Point of clarification, it's Monday, August 4th.
Oh, sorry. Yep, not next Monday, Monday, August 4th.
You're scaring me, but yes.
Sorry. Yep. Keith is trying to get all the notifications out in a timely fashion. So, yeah, August 4th. We have an extra week this coming up. So, but it's the next sentence that concerns us about the Village Commercial District. The second sentence in B is, however, in the IC district, a PUD or a residential PUD shall be allowed in the Village Residential Commercial, the VRC, the GRC, Gateway Residential Commercial, the Village Commercial, the Commercial, or the IC. So we are saying that in the Village Commercial District, which we're talking about right now, you can put a residential PUD, right, which is entirely residences. We have defined it in the beginning of this section as being entirely residences. So then you keeping that in mind, that you can have a residential PUD, fully residential, in the village commercial, you move down through the general conditions to item number G.
Sorry, folks. I was going to the district. But don't get sick with what I'm doing here. Okay, there you go. Sorry
So
about that.
in G, it says a PUD may contain only commercial uses or may contain mixed commercial and residential uses. Then the next sentence is the one that concerns us. In the VC, village commercial, C or IC, at least 50% of the gross building floor area must be in commercial use. So we have said in point B that you can have a fully residential building. In this section, we say in this district, any you have to have 50% of the gross building floor area must be in commercial use. And that could be understood to be saying that as long as it's not a residential PUD, in other words, if it's not all residences, if it's got some commercial and some residences, those are the ones that 50% of the floor area has to be commercial. But that doesn't really make a lot of sense. If the whole building could be residential, then why would you want to, if you're going to make it part and parcel, why would you want to restrict it to being 50% commercial on the ground floor?
And we have clear definitions that identify PUD and residential PUD as pure residential.
Well, Mark, this is also kind of a problem to me, is that we do have those definitions, but what we don't have is a consistent use of the word PUD. In other words, in the first paragraph of the PUD section, it says that a residential PUD shall be a type of PUD, but that means that you don't know when you use the word PUD if you're also including residential PUD or not. So we either have to say always, and this is throughout this document, because in most districts, a PUD is allowed, but because of the way it's written here, you don't know if that means a PUD or a residential PUD. So we either have to totally separate those two terms and only use them separately, and if we want to use both of them, write both of them, or we have to do it in some other way that clarifies that point. That is a good point because it is confusing.
Yes.
I disagree with what I think I heard you just say, Virginia. I mean, for the purposes of these zoning regulations, residential PUDs shall be considered a type of planned unit development means that residential PUDs are a subset of all PUDs. Therefore, when we talk about PUDs, we are, I think, including residential PUDs as well.
Right, but that doesn't work for these.
You're right, Chris, but the definition in PUD earlier, or where it says PUDs residential are allowed in the industrial commercial districts, I think that's where the conflict is.
Right. Right. No, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that I don't think there's any, I think there's a conflict, but it's not because there's any ambiguity in this definition. The definition seems pretty straightforward. It's because, as Mark said, there's a problem later on.
So are these
Well,
actually in the definition sections of the zoning regs?
Yes.
Commercial PUD, residential PUD, and mixed PUD?
Well, it's residential and just PUD and residential, I believe. I'll look that
And
up.
so PUD includes a mix of commercial and residential in its definition?
That's
And
my
then there's
understanding.
strictly a PUD for residential. But there
Well,
isn't a PUD for just different commercial
Correct.
developments. Maybe
Yes,
we should make
So
all,
the PUD is the mixed use that you're thinking of, Mark, and
Yeah.
and then it breaks it out into residential PUD, which is strictly residence, so.
well, what if we broke it into the 3 different sections and then better clearly defined which districts we want the 3 different forms of a PUD allowed? Like in the industrial commercial section, it would make sense to allow a commercial PUD, possibly, although I'm personally not in favor of it, but maybe the board overall would be in favor of a mixed PUD. But then clearly, eliminating residential PUD. We start with the 3 definitions and then we go through the different
Why do
areas.
why do we need a mixed PUD definition? Why, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like
Well,
in here, in the purpose, we're saying 50% commercial and residential, that is mixed.
Right, but we also, I think, would want to, a PUD is basically designed to allow a developable property to maintain the district boundaries like setbacks and whatever, but allow flexibility between the sub properties within the developed area. So you may have a different lots of a commercial center where normally the setback is 20 feet or something, but within this commercial PUD, you want to allow businesses to be right next to each other. You maybe even shared walls or whatever. And that's fine within the commercial PUD, but not within the district as a whole. You have to have setbacks. So you may want to allow a commercial PUD in a commercial district. And then in some of those in-between places, village commercial maybe, you might want to allow a mix, all 3 of them, not necessarily mandate mixed, or maybe you wouldn't want pure residential, but maybe you would want to allow either a commercial or a mixed use inside a village commercial district. But then in a residential area, you certainly wouldn't want a commercial PUD. But you may want to allow, like at the end of Church Street, a residential PUD, which has worked out absolutely fantastically and has a much higher density than the district itself allowed. But because of its residential PUD, those condos and houses were put closer together. We have a much higher density neighborhood there than is allowed in the rest of the district, and it works out just great.
So in reference to Chris's point, for instance, in section 3.5, which is the current village commercial district, allowed use with conditional approval, M is planned unit development. But because we have said residential PUD is a type of planned unit development, that should include
Right.
all kinds of PUDs, because it just says PUD as provided in 512. And in 512, it says you can have a residential in one section, and in another section, it says 50% has to be in commercial use. So it's unclear in the section itself that relates to each zoning district when the term PUD is used. Does it include residential PUDs? Because if it does, there's something wrong with the way our PUD section is written.
Well, if it refers to PUDs, according to the definition that we were just looking at, it does include residential PUDs. So I agree, there's something wrong with it.
So, and the fact that in our definitions, we're not exactly clear either, because we say that a planned residential development is a type of planned unit development. So we just have to figure out how to write it clearly if we're going to have different rules for residential versus commercial versus mixed. If we're going to have different rules, should we separate them out? And, you know, Keith, I don't know if you know, in most zonings, does the term PUD include any of those things?
I mean, I don't recall back in the day, but, all I can say is there is an administrative issue here that needs to be resolved, with these definitions for sure. No doubt about that. I've never seen a PUD termed a residential PUD. I've always seen it as a PUD and a mixed use PUD. I've never seen a residential PUD.
So
But-
what is your understanding of just the PUD? Would that be just commercial?
No, that would be residential typically.
Residential only.
Residential. And then the mix would be, you would suture in the commercial with the mixed. That's been my experience.
Does it make sense to make a third category of commercial PUDs that allows flexibility in the development of commercial properties?
I mean, I think for the layperson, it may. Administratively, I don't have an issue with it, but definitely for clarity purposes, I don't think it would hurt if you had a commercial PUD, and then you define it as strictly commercial, no residential. Then you have a mixed use, which is however you want to define that as residential and commercial. Then you have strictly a residential PUD. Yeah, that's up to you guys how you want to do that. But right now, it's the way the language is just not working administratively. I don't think the definitions are horrible. I can work with them. It's just how they're introduced into each section and in 512, as Virginia has pointed out.
Well, I think if we're going to have those three different categories, for instance, we do have to change the definition of a residential PUD as being a type of PUD. A residential PUD is just a thing on its own that
Yes.
has rules associated with it. A PUD is just a thing on its own that has rules associated with it, and a mixed-use PUD, if we wanted to separate it into three components. You know, I mean, to me, that's the most clear. It's a little cumbersome maybe, but
Let me ask a question here, and maybe I'm missing something, but do we want the definition of the PUD, or in which PUD gets chosen, to be where the types of buildings that are allowed within that district get defined? It doesn't seem like we do, because we want that to be broader, right? You know, for the different neighborhoods, you know, we're saying what kinds of commercial, residential, or other buildings are allowed in there, and it applies whether it's a PUD or not. If I'm understanding correctly, with the PUD relaxes certain setback and other constraints that would normally apply as well, which are also general. Can we have the PUD be free of these sector requirements and just apply to the relaxation of the relevant setback and other requirements, whether it's residential or commercial, that apply to that district? Does that make sense?
well, are you defining the residential and the non-residential PUDs differently, or the same? Are you just calling them all
I'm saying it would
PUDs?
just be PUD. There wouldn't be, it would just, and what PUD would mean is that in that district, in that planning district, whether, let's say I'm mixing up terms, in that neighborhood, you were allowed to have residential or commercial or mixed, that within that PUD, and we're just talking about PUD only here, that the setback and other requirements get relaxed, as we've talked about, rather than it being in the definition of PUD saying whether it can be residential or commercial.
Oh, hi there. I'm so happy.
Allison, can you please put yourself on mute? Thank you.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah. Well, so Chris, let's say the Village Residential Neighborhood North, where they don't really have commercial uses allowed, but you would want to allow a residential PUD. So how would you deal with that? Would you put as an allowed use a PUD, but only residential? Would you write it in there, or?
So what you want to do is say you can't have residences in that neighborhood unless it's in a PUD?
No, you can't have businesses in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Is what we've got right now, what we put into the neighborhoods based on their requests. They didn't want to allow businesses, so you wouldn't be able to have a mixed PUD or a fully commercial PUD, but you would be allowed to have a residential PUD. So, I mean, if we're going to specify that some districts may or may not have one of those types of PUDs, then you have to do it somewhere. You either have to have separate definitions, or you have to lay it out differently in the PUD section, or you have to lay it out differently in the individual sections. If we're going to have places, you know, that, because our PUD section so far has included more than just like the setback requirements. It's included, you know, the use question.
Right.
So
I think maybe I'm just not familiar enough with it to be able to answer that question.
Now, keep in mind, PUDs do not allow for an increase in density. They still have to follow the density of the district. It just allows you to move things around and really the ultimate reason for it, at least in my experience back in the day, back in the 90s and so, was to allow for open space. That's the main thing. And the consolidation of infrastructure. It was supposed to help with that, you know, as opposed to the 1 acre, the 5 acre zoning that I was used to back then. So that's my 2 cents.
but what we did with it and what we have done with it is we have used the PUD procedure kind of in lieu of a better procedure to make, for instance, buildings that have a commercial space and residential space. Now, it wasn't exactly designed for that. Like Keith said, it was more about allowing for open space with, you know, clustering and that kind of thing. But we have come to use it for uses as well, you know, for mixing uses. So you could have, if you wanted to have several different buildings on the same lot, they could be close together and one could be a business and 2 could be residences. Or within the same building, because we don't have any other provision for that, you could have a commercial space and residences. So we've used it in a way that it has complicated things. Ian?
I think if I was someone who was going to be developing a lot somewhere in town, it would be nice for me if I could identify the district that I'm in and know what kind of PUDs are allowed there. It seems pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is it too complicated to write it that way?
No, not necessarily. I mean, you know, I think first of all, we should agree that we want to have different kinds of PUDs by use. Like, are we all agreed that we want in some districts to allow residential PUDs and not commercial, or vice versa, commercial and not residential? You know, if we want to allow all different kinds of PUDs in all the districts, then it doesn't really matter that we separate them out. If we want to have different kinds of PUDs be allowed in different districts, then this is when we have this problem.
And we do want to restrict uses in certain districts, right?
Well, do you? I mean,
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think in a residential neighborhood, I wouldn't want to allow a commercial PUD.
Right.
Yeah.
So that seems to suggest that we need to separate them somehow and not call a residential PUD a subset of PUDs, because then the language is muddy.
So the three distinct definitions, and then you take each definition and then you mix and match into whatever district you want to put them into.
Yeah,
So, sorry if I was putting the cart before the horse. I didn't mean to.
yeah.
do
No,
that.
well, I mean, what you're saying is a simple way to do it is, yes, you want to go and look at your district and you want to see, is it commercial, like you live in a neighborhood. You go to your district, the VRNN, and you think you want to put up a PUD that has a bodega on the bottom and apartments on the top, and you find you can't do that
Mhm.
because it only lists residential PUDs.
Right.
It doesn't say list PUD as described in section 5.12.
Right.
So,
There's a bit on.
yeah, so I mean, if people are agreed that we would like to be able to have different kinds of PUDs in different districts, then I think we should go ahead and mock up something which has three separate definitions and a way of writing 512 that talks about each separate kind of PUD.
I think I have a one point of clarity. I'm confused about the mixed still, because it would make sense to me as the planning commission that, well, okay, we've got three options. We've got only residential PUDs, only commercial PUDs, and then mixed.
Mhm.
That can be both. But one other point is that I actually like in the language how you put a percentage there. And I think as if possible, right, as we're dealing with the mixed category, having that percentage and thinking through that is nice. Do you think that's
Sure.
too much regulation?
Well, why would you do that? Why would you have, if you, okay, just talking about the mixed commercial and residential, why does it matter to us how much of it is commercial and how much is residential? Why would we care about that exactly?
I think we would care because we want Richmond, or I think we want Richmond to have more affordable housing, right? And if we have an overabundance within a mixed section, we have an overabundance of commercial, that might be limiting our opportunity to provide more housing.
Well,
It seems to me that you're suggesting that we don't have a limit so that it can go either commercial or residential, however much is needed. So, I mean, what we have now is a requirement that 50% of the floor area be commercial, which is limiting to housing. If you're trying to put up a mixed PUD, that would be limiting for housing. So, anyway, I think, Ian, you had your hand up or first? Yep.
Ian, you're on mute.
Oh, Chris, then?
Well, Ian, do you want to go? You're just on mute.
You're on
can't-
mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I got the dog barking. I'm trying to manage that. I, to Rebecca's point, I think if you're concerned about housing, from what we've been observing, most of the developers are not really interested in commercial anyway, because they can't make any money
Okay.
right now. That won't necessarily be forever though, and this is these zoning changes tend to take a long time to change, I guess, so I don't know, just food for thought. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I think I was gonna go talk in that same vein, and that I think that 50% commercial floor space requirement is, part of what went in place, I don't know, 15 years ago, that we just did away with in Jelena Court, or that we proposed to the select board they do away with in Jelena Court. for the reason that Ian just talked about. And that was driven by a strong desire back when to make sure that Richmond didn't become just a bedroom community, basically just be residential housing. The unfortunate reality is that while we might be able to force developers who really want to build residential housing to include commercial space, that doesn't mean that we can enable them to rent it. And we're seeing that happen right now. So, I feel like we've kind of worked our way, I hope we've worked our way through that issue, and I'm certainly open to good ideas to make sure that we don't make it impossible to open a small business in Richmond in the future. I don't know that we have really grappled with that issue, but I think the technique anyway of requiring minimum allocations to commercial space is not working.
Mhm. Mark.
Yeah, to the point, to Rebecca's point about 50%, that may not be a, we set up these three definitions of these three subclasses of PUD, all residential, gonna go in village, residential neighborhood, north and south. It's pretty clear that those are supposed to be residential areas, and you'd assign that there. And then the mixed use, I would say we'd set into the definition as 50% of floor space, unless district specific limits are specific, something like that. So that, yes, maybe in the push to allow more residential, you might want to allow a mixed use development in a commercial district, not necessarily maybe the IC district, the industrial commercial, but in a commercial district, you want to allow some residential. But maybe it should be less than 50% of the floor space, or more than. I mean, that's something that we should debate and sort of define. And then we go through each one of these sections and say, okay, this district is AR district, it's residential. At some point, we'll quarter off parts of the AR, I think, and make them more of a mixed use. But at this point, they're all AR, and those are all residential PUDs. The north and south districts, residential. Village commercial, mixed, 50%. And maybe for the gateway, we would want to allow either a full residential or full commercial, or a mixed use without a defined limit. But by default, keep a mixed use at 50% and then work it out per district for added flexibility.
Okay. Ian.
So for example, Gabe Furman owns the building the Hatchet's in. He's got a couple apartments upstairs.
4, I think. 4.
Like, what if you wanted to turn the Hatchet into apartments? Like,
I think that district is mandating first floor commercial.
Okay.
I think it's part of the same side as the block, which also only mandates first floor commercial.
But that's not set in stone. I mean, that's up to us.
You could allow more flexibility there, but do we want to allow more flexibility right there in the heart of our downtown?
No, I don't.
And so that's where we can look at each district and say, maybe we should keep that first floor commercial, or maybe there's districts, I'm not really thinking about it, maybe in Jonesville commercial district, where maybe you do want to allow 100% residential or anywhere in between. a mixed use of any percentage without defining it.
Okay, so that's one idea. I will report a conversation that I had with Dan Noyes at the hardware store. So I went over to talk to him about the residential in the village commercial question. And we had a good discussion. Would like to retire. I guess he's been saying that for a while. But the hardware store and the lumber store is going to be owned by his son, Christopher. And Christopher has told him that he does not always want to run a lumber store and a hardware store, and he would like options. So he was going to discuss this, even though I've reported previously that he has said he didn't like the residential in the commercial because people complain about the trucks. There's always some complaint if there are neighbors to commercial businesses like the ones that he has. So he could not rule out a scenario where on those back lots that he has now sold to the Brown brothers, a residential PUD, for instance, was established. He kind of didn't want to rule it out. Now, the way we left our conversation was that he is going to talk to his son about it. I tried to lay out the details of this question for him, and we'll have him come in maybe sometime and talk to the whole planning commission. Options was what he was interested in. So, that's a hard thing to grapple with. It's a little bit like Jolena Court, the fact that people want options to be able to make things succeed. And if they can't make it fly with commercial, they would at least, if they're left with a piece of property or a building, like to have the residential potential. So that's just something to think about. We could, kind of mock up the three definitions and think about different districts having different amounts of commercial requirements. I don't know, that seems kind of complicated, but what do you think about that idea, Keith?
Well, let's put pen to paper and see how it looks. I think that would really be the way to do it.
Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit interested in, Chris, your feeling that, maybe we should not apply it to uses the way we have been applying it to uses, which was not what that kind of strategy was originally designed for. How we would then, have to change the rest of our regulations to allow for instance, for a building like the Big Spruce with the 4 apartments above it, which went in as a PUD, or if somebody wanted to make, let's say, a cottage cluster that's going in as a PUD, or Gary's Peaceable Kingdom development that went in as a PUD, maybe, that one is more like the traditional use of PUD language, but we've kind of used it for a lot of different applications. So
it's a great tool. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's a great tool.
Well, and I fully admit that when I asked that question, I didn't know whether pulling it that strand of yarn would start unraveling the whole sweater, and I don't think that's what we want to do. So
kind of might be more than we really want to do to solve this particular problem. I mean, to solve this particular little conflict, we just either have to take out that you can have a residential PUD in the village commercial district, or we have to take out the part that says you have to have 50% in commercial space. You know, we could fix it kind of. It wouldn't get to the root problem, which Mark has identified and bothers me also, that it's unclear whether one is a subset of the other, and that every time you use the word PUD, are you or aren't you including residential PUDs, which I think in general is kind of a long-term problem with the language, the way we have it. And, you know, somebody is going to come in and say, well, it says here you can do such and such with a PUD, which says is the residential is a subtype of it, so that must include it. So
Yeah, well,
I don't want
not
that to happen.
yeah, not a lawyer here, but when I read that, you know, in the context of regulations where it says that a residential PUD is a type of PUD, then later on when we reference PUD, I think a lawyer would say you are also referencing residential PUDs unless it's explicitly excluded.
Right, which we haven't done in many cases in our districts. We don't specifically either include or not include residential PUD from the term PUD. So, you know, we need to kind of go one way or the other with that. So would Allison, yeah.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi. Just listening to all this, I'm kind of busy with my swimming business right now, but you know, I've driven a lot around the area, and something I've noticed, like over in the area of Williston and Essex and some of those places, that the businesses are either getting bigger or they're not there anymore. And the whole area seems to have taken on a more commercial kind of tone. There's plenty of commerce around. And I think what we don't have is enough residential area that's very near commerce. And I just want to make that comment. I don't have a magic solution for this, but I do know that there is this other aspect of the fact that I've said this before, that God zoned Richmond. What did we have? We have steep slopes and rivers and whatnot, but we have a rather unique place here in Richmond, and it's I don't mean to say that the status quo is perfect, but it offers a great deal on both sides, just the way it is. And I'm not sure that we should be too anxious to change it. I do sympathize with the people that own the businesses and think they want to change some things. It's their choice. But I have to say I've lived in many places. I've been in many places all over the world. And this is a great spot. So I don't think we should work too hard to change it. I think if we can compromise between business opportunities and residential places that are pleasant for people to live in and safe, and if we can kind of protect ourselves from river flooding, that this would be a great triumph in an absolutely unique place.
so Allison, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Dan Noy's son, or the new owners of the 3 commercial lots at the end
Yes.
of Railroad Street, which are Roger Brown and his brother,
Yeah.
if they wanted to build a fully residential, either a building or a group of small residences, would you think that should not be allowed? Because some of it should be retained for commercial space. How would you feel about that if you were to have to tell him, you cannot build a fully residential PUD because we want to keep some of this for commercial?
I don't think I would do that.
You don't think you would do what?
I don't think I'd tell him that he can't do that. I think
Okay, So you are suggesting that we allow residential PUDs
Yes.
in the village commercial district. So the possible end result of that is that it becomes all commercial. I mean, residential, that it becomes
Yeah.
all residential. That is the possible end, worst case scenario, that it all becomes residential. So just trying to lay it on the ground as to what could happen if we said that would be fine. I mean, it probably wouldn't happen because nobody's going to want to build an all residential PUD on every single one of those lots. They're going to want to use them for some commercial purposes, but it could happen if we're saying that's okay. And Mark is saying, on the other hand, let's not, I think, let them have fully residential, but they could have mixed with some commercial and some residential. But Mark, go ahead, leap in.
I would think in that circumstance, the circumstance you're explaining where there's a development, there's property that's changed hands at the edge, the border of, in this case, the, was it village commercial?
It's village commercial bordering on AR.
Right, so it's AR, but it's also bordering on, village residential, which is, what, Railroad Street on the other side? Where there's mixed use. I would, in this circumstance,
That's residential commercial, Yep.
as you pointed out, I personally would be opposed to allowing full residential PUDs in designated commercial areas for exactly that. But in these circumstances where it's on the edge of the boundary anyways, and it's right next to the, what is that housing organization right there? That's all residential, right at the end of the block.
Champlain Housing Trust.
Champlain Housing. So I mean, that's also all residential. So there's warrant there to maybe shift the Champlain Trust and the Brown properties, if we can call them that, into a district that would allow a residential without necessarily getting allowing residential PUDs in the entire district.
Well, we already moved Borden Street into the Village Residential North, so it's not really part of the commercial district. But the Village Commercial District is so small that every part of it is on the edge of another district, if you know what I mean.
But it's at the far end. It's on the back end of the property, bordering the AR and basically abutting the Champlain housing property. So the principle of moving that to residential north seems like a reasonable allowance without compromising the integrity of all commercial districts everywhere.
Well, those 3 properties that the Brown brothers now own are currently planned for some kind of commercial uses.
Right?
But they could, that is only the dreams. They could go either way. And, all the properties along Railroad Street, all of the properties border on either the properties on Church Street, which is a village neighborhood, or on the other side, they border on the residential commercial. So there's no property in that whole district that doesn't border on something with residential uses.
Right, but if you were to come and to the mission and say, okay, the IC district is, it's commercial everywhere, but we want to turn the hardware store, which is smack dab in the middle of that commercial area, into residential. That would be more of a concern to me as far as neighborhoodliness.
Yeah.
But something out on the fringe, already abutting village residential areas, that conversion seems more natural while still protecting the core entity of of the multiple commercial districts we have, which we want to maintain at least some level of mixed use or commercial use.
Well, the hardware store already has apartments above it, by the way. I don't know if you know that, but the
I
hardware
do-
store
Oh, yeah, I know, I do
has
know.
apartments above it.
I'm not sure
and-
if they're allowed, but I'm
Yeah,
glad they're
well,
there. My sister-in-law used to live there. They were,
Yeah,
it's,
so,
it's
you know, there are residences, there are single-family homes on that road.
yeah,
So I'm not sure how you would actually write a zoning that isolated the properties at the end of that road.
I think we'd have to approach it on a case-by-case basis, much like we did with the kind folks out by the Lucky Spot, you know, where we said, okay, well, there's things that we can do to facilitate your goals while still maintaining the integrity of the commercial district that surrounded their completely residential property.
So you're suggesting that we keep
when you
keep
don't
the
try-
commercial, keep it commercial for now, and if somebody wanted to do something different, they would come to the planning commission to go through a 1-year process of changing the zoning to residential? Is that what you're suggesting?
That's what I'm suggesting in order to maintain some integrity in our commercial districts without allowing them to just intermittently random residential PUDs just popping up in the middle of commercial districts. And then much like Dan has pointed out over the years, have the conflict of residences existing in a commercial district willy-nilly without any structure, and all of a sudden them complaining that, oh, the commercial activity is disrupting my afternoon naps. You know what I mean? These
Yeah.
districts exist as they are. Why do we want to just totally disintegrate their consistency by allowing all types of PUDs in all types of districts?
Yeah, well, we could just not allow
Something about
residential
residential.
PUDs.
We should keep residential out of commercial as much as possible.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Ian,
I agree with Mark in principle.
so you would just not have residential PUDs in the village commercial district?
Yeah, and if someone is someone is really hot to change something like that, then
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna take them, they're gonna have to work a little harder at it, I
Yep.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and you're okay, Ian, with having a mixed, that's commercial and residential in
Mhm.
this district, which already exists? Because the hardware
Yeah.
store has apartments over
Yeah,
it, so.
Because it already
I mean,
exists. Yeah.
It's grandfathered there, those
Right.
apartments are grandfathered, but,
Yep.
Right.
so.
It's working okay.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, so this conversation suggests that we just take out the statement that says a residential PUD is allowed in that district, in the village commercial district.
I would hope the approach is goes a little deeper than that. And that I do think that it warrants the identification of the 3 different subclasses of PUD and the removal of simply a PUD is allowed in these districts, and then identifying the 3 subclasses under allowed use or under conditional use. Different units based on different things. You know, you might want to allow a mixed use in the village commercial or the village residential,
Mm-hmm.
but you may not want to just have it zone completely, come before the ZA and say, it's allowed, we're doing it, make it a conditional use. So we could take each one of those 3 classifications of PUD and assign them appropriate levels of review.
Yeah, well, all PUDs have to go before the DRB. And, you know, what we started to do when Revy was the planner was, it's not really a use. PUD is not a use, it's a procedure. So it's not in the use tables. In our newer districts, we take it out of the use table. It's not a use, it's a process that planned unit developments may be allowed in this district. Keith, I don't know how you feel about that, but it's, we started taking it out of the use table because it's not a use, it's a procedure, it's a
And
process.
that makes sense. And
And every
has its
PUD goes through the DRB, and every PUD follows the PUD rules of what the application looks like, what you need,
But I do see the logic of the subdivisions of a PUD being uses, being
Yeah.
classified as a use, in that it would either be allowed or, fortunately, good that it does at least mandate DRB review, but at
Well,
least
it's just not listed in the use. It's listed as a separate item in each district.
well,
If you look at the new districts that we've done, it's listed as a separate item saying this kind of PUD, and if we divide them into different groups, 3 different kinds, you could say, for instance, under the village neighborhoods north, a residential PUD is permitted in the VRNN, blah, blah, blah. In the village commercial district, they're not listed under uses, but it's listed as a procedure that you can use to
That's fine. I
create a
think
mixed or
that's
a
just-
fully
I-
commercial.
But we should define within each district which type of PUD
Right.
is
We
allowed.
will have to do that. Yeah,
Not a
we would
use
have to
will
do
have
that.
A
If we're
separate
gonna,
paragraph, that works fine.
yeah, if we're gonna have different ones allowed in different districts, obviously in each district, we have to allow which one is going to be allowed.
Perfect.
So any other comments? Should we try thinking like that, like having these just be 3 differently defined procedures? And in each district, say which ones of those you want? I mean, we still haven't completely decided on the question of the mixed, if you want to have a certain amount of commercial. And I suppose you could do that district by district. I mean, if you really wanted to do that. If you wanted to, maybe we should mock that up and
Yeah.
see what people think about that.
Yeah, I think
when
you're gonna
actually-
find out real quick if it's gonna work well or not administratively, to be honest with you. I mean, we'll see. I do like the idea from an administrative point of view that we do have the 3 separate ones. You know, you have one in, and then a mix. I mean, I do like that. Then we'll have to start plugging it into the district, see how it works. But yeah, we have to go through the machinations of that, honestly. And I think we'll find out pretty quickly how well it's gonna work.
Yeah, and we would have to, that involves really rewriting section 512.
Yeah.
Will have to be rewritten differently because it will have to talk about each one of those separately defined kinds of procedures. All right, anybody else want to say anything else about that? We can get started on it. Mark? Yeah.
Would it be reasonable at this point to create a matrix for us to review in the next meeting, maybe, where we would have the list of each district and then residential, mixed use 50%, commercial, and then we bring it up and we look at a map and we say, okay, in this district, we only want residential. And and X out the other 2, and then next, and just go through each one of those districts. And then that would create a template for what we would need to edit in the individual districts as we progress. And see if there's any sort of commonality in what we think is appropriate for each one of those districts and how much more of a debate that's going to be. But if we just went through it very quickly as here it is, here's where this location is on the map. Do you think which one of these PUD types would be applicable there. And we spend a little time.
Yep.
And then go back and work on editing the PUD district itself and editing the related district
Yeah,
section.
we could do something like that. And I mean, the other thing we could combine that with is there's the little Round Church Corners complex island
Yes.
down, you know, where Man and Machine is and the grooming shoppy. And I personally would like to see that as part of the village commercial district rather than as part of the general commercial district, which also includes exit 11. It seems to me it makes better sense, since we've tried to include the village neighborhoods south, bringing it into the village because it's walkable, to
Yeah.
include that small island of commercial into the village commercial, to put it in the same district.
But I'm not sure that the property owners in that district are interested in having it equal village commercial zoning, because village commercial may well allow mixed use. And I didn't get the vibe in conversations we've had historically with the property owners there that they're
Yeah.
interested in
Well,
residential. So
I mean-
don't want to force it on them, but yeah, we can certainly explore it as we move forward, as long as we bring in, like, brought in Dan Noyes for this decision.
I think we should explore it. I think it makes good sense, and this may be, you know, I mean, I would hate to do it if all of those people, those property owners down there hated it, but on the other hand, you know, we're supposed to be
I'd hate that you
making
would,
some reasonable decisions about what the zoning should be. So I don't know. I would be willing to, you know, try to be persuasive that it's a good thing, but we'll have to, you know, we'll have to try it out on them and see. If we're not going to allow fully residential PUDs in the Railroad Street area, well, that would be compatible with the Round Church Corners complex. To allow a mixed, you know, they have upstairs and they could go higher. It might be options for them. We don't know that. I mean, and if we're interested in having more residential units, then maybe allowing the upstairs units, if we're going to say that the ground floor has to be commercial, for instance, maybe allowing upstairs units, they could be persuaded that that's a reasonable thing. And I don't know if we want to do that with the other commercial tiny chunks that we have in Richmond, which we have to deal with at some point. The VYCC is commercial. It shouldn't really be. It's really ag with business. Jonesville commercial is all in the floodplain. You know, I mean, the commercial district is kind of a hodgepodge. So to me, this piece, that piece fits better with the village commercial, especially if we're trying to tie it all together. Anyway,
Yeah.
we can put that out there and then have a conversation.
I would add, I wouldn't be seeing anything like next meeting on this subject. It might be pushing out a little bit more into August or September, to be honest with you. We are knee deep in the town plan at this point. We need to start writing that. We need to have our priorities. But that's my 2 cents. I'm not gonna be able to spend a lot of time on this. So.
For the foreseeable future.
For the
So-
just managing expectations, that's all.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a start anyway to this conversation that we would like to have. And then there are the changes, you know, if we allow, just to round this conversation out, if we allow full-time residential uses, which means apartments above commercial buildings in the village commercial district, which is served by water and sewer, Act 47 and 181 would be required to apply to
If-
that.
On mixed use.
Exactly. on the mixed, well, the requirements of Act 47 and 181 just say you have to allow certain things in the district if you are served by water and sewer and you allow full-time residential uses. So, you know, we would have to carefully look at that, because we know that it involves allowing duplexes wherever you can have a single family home. But maybe if you don't allow single family homes, that doesn't apply. I don't think we have the answer to that. You have to allow 3 and 4 unit buildings wherever you could put a single family home. So, you know, there's the question of the existing single family homes. So that's a little wrinkle that's added into this whole question about what's going to happen to the commercial districts of villages. The wrinkle is Act 47 and 181 may need to be applied here. So
Again, that's if we allow single family homes versus multi-use, where there would be upper stories, residential, main stories.
well, it doesn't exactly say it like that. It says that you can put those things, a duplex or a 3 to 4 unit building, wherever, actually I have it, I can read it to you.
Where residential uses are allowed. I believe.
What, Keith?
It's wherever residential uses are allowed.
In any district that allows year-round residential development, so if you have apartments where people live full-time, presumably that's full-time residential development, duplexes shall be allowed as shall be an allowed use with dimensional standards that are not more restrictive than is required for a single unit dwelling, including no land additional or lot area than would be required for a single unit dwelling. Now, it doesn't exactly say that you have to allow single family dwellings in the district in order for this to be the case. So anyway, we have to look at this further and try to understand what it means if you're only allowing residential uses in PUDs. Do these things apply? So we're working on trying to understand that. So that's the question. You know, it was written by the legislature and it didn't take into account all the different wrinkles of the way things could be arranged.
Definitely think we can agree it's not a well-written law.
Yeah, it's tough when they come and meddle in the zoning, the legislature. They don't really write them from the point of view of using them.
They read it from the heart and not the head.
Yep.
So anyway, all right. So let's move on from there. I mean, you know, Allison's point about it being a nice village is a bigger question. Like, what is the fate of all these villages in Vermont? These little villages, are they going to have commercial or are they not going to have commercial within their borders? You know, is all the commercial going to be in neighboring towns and everyone is going to just be bedroom communities? I don't know, but we can't really go there right now. So sorry I brought it up. All right. So the other place that is a lot easier to work with Act 47 and 181 is the Village Residential Commercial District, which we did redo recently, and most of the aspects of 47 and 181, thanks to the Brandy Saxton report for the Housing Committee, were already put in this because we knew it was coming. She told us this was coming, and she was right. And so we have allowed duplexes and we have allowed 3 to 4 unit buildings. So there isn't that much that has to be changed to make the Village Residential Commercial District compatible with 181 and 47.
Good.
So if we look at it, which we are doing right now on the shared screen, you can see as you go down a little bit there under permitted uses, we have two-family dwelling, multifamily with up to 4 units. We already have that in there. That's great. That's required. We have all the commercial uses. And you can see that in this district, we've taken the planned unit development line out of the uses and put it separately at the end. But the conditional uses, we do have this multiple use building because that's what the PUD section has been used for before. That's not really a good way to use it. So we've actually made a use that it's a multiple use building. If all the uses are allowed, you can have some residential uses, some laundromat, some recreation. So if you pick out a bunch of different uses that are all permitted or conditional in this district, you can put them together in one building without using the PUD process. So that was already done. So where we need a few changes are we come down to the residential density section, and we're going to write it the way we have written now the other new district residential density sections with a maximum base residential density in case we ever want to apply the density bonus section, which they're going to vote on at the select board at their August meeting, their August 4th meeting. They're going to vote on it. Let's say they approve it because they said they liked it. They wanted it. At the last meeting we had with them, they wanted that, so that's in there. So this now is just written so that you could add to this section language saying you can also have the residential density bonuses taking you to a maximum total residential density of X, whatever we would want to put in. So we are required to say that the minimum lot size has to be the 0.2 acres because that's what Act 47 and 181 require in any district served by water and sewer, blah, blah, blah. You have to have the minimum lot size be 0.2 acres. So we have changed that. We had it be 1/4 of an acre. We're going to 1/5 of an acre. So there's not that much of a change there, but you have to have that in there. So, and then we took out the residential density from this section because it's not really a dimensional requirement. We put it up there in the residential density section. So minimum lot size has been changed. The base residential density, we already were less than what was required. So up in the residential density section, you can see we had a dwelling unit for 5,000 square feet. That's what we had originally said, that we could have 8 units per acre in this district. The density was 8 units per acre. So that's fine. That's just better than 47 and 181, which is requiring at least 5. We have 8.
Yeah.
So that's fine. We just have to change the numbers a little bit. Okay. Then the next thing is, okay, go ahead, keep scrolling down there. The lot frontage question. So we now have the 0.2 acre as a minimum lot size. And in the other districts, the village neighborhoods where we were required to have the minimum lot size be 0.2 acres, we changed the frontage because it seemed like you can't have that much frontage in small acres of 0.2 acres. And we changed it down from 75 feet actually to 55 feet. I looked through the new village neighborhoods, it's 55 feet, so we could have this be 55 feet to be compatible with that. But that is a change that is not required exactly by Act 47 and 181, but it does seem like having a required very small lot size, you don't want to have a very long required frontage. So I don't know if people have anything they want to say about that. That is optional. That is, some of the other changes are not optional. This is optional. Any comments about it? Do we want to make it 55 like the neighborhoods? Do we want to? We've allowed greater density in this district to try to help with the housing crisis. This was a district that, and to match 47 and 181.
Yeah.
So you can think about that if you want, if nobody has any comments right now, but if you could think about that, what do you want the frontage to be? Then the next change is
Just the
the
addition.
height. Yeah, so this is assuming that on the 4th of August, they approved section 6.16, which is the law of the state, allowing affordable developments. They can go, if it's a true affordable housing development, they can go up by 1 floor by law above your height restriction. So we would have to put that in because that's the law. Mark.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could see a map of this district. I was
Yeah, I could pull one up.
the online zoning regulations don't have the maps included in.
Yeah, there's a map. If you go to the ordinances online, there's a map in
In
there.
ordinances?
Yep. I do believe, but I can pull it up though. Actually, it might be in the planning and zoning page. Yeah, so under ordinances and policies, zoning and subdivision regulations.
Richmond
There's-
zoning maps.
Yeah, Richmond Village zoning is you want to go right to, because that'll get you to the focus.
Ooh.
And that is the one that looks like cinder blocks.
Do you want to look at that right now, Mark, or?
For me, I don't know if anybody else does, but I am looking at it right now.
Okay.
I would be interested.
Let me pull it up.
Okay. So can you share that, Keith, or no?
Yep, give me a sec, give me a sec. Patience, grasshopper. Yeah, everybody see this?
Yeah.
It's out of the
Yeah, and
way.
as a recap, it looks like it's
It's the bricks.
east and west Main Street, and then along Bridge Street.
Bridge Street, correct. And then a portion over by Nana Machine.
Yep, there are 5 lots across of the Huntington Road from
Oh,
Man and Machine.
Behind Man and Machine, yeah.
Well,
and
across
across
from
the road
Man and
too.
Machine.
That's right. There's a couple there. So where the condo units are, and then across the street from the Stone Corral.
So this is a pretty high density area, not as high as the village downtown or Jolena Court. It's next in line.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the height change. The next change that Keith and I talked about while we have this opened up is under site design standards.
Oh my, where'd it go?
It's up.
What I miss?
Right there. Okay. So under site design standards, we were talking about it and thought that we should have some buffering between commercial and residential properties. This is a residential commercial district. You can have both residences and commercial, but maybe what is needed is for the infill development, if a house or a building is going to be put between two others, you need some requirement that there be buffering with either plants, or we haven't worked out the details exactly, but screening of some kind to protect one use from the other. So the new building, let's say you have a yard that has, then you're going to put a new building in it. You need to provide screening from the existing buildings so that we don't have as many conflicts. And hopefully we're going to have some stormwater regulations too, right, Keith? Not in this document, but I mean, are there going to be stormwater regulations beyond the existing for these new properties that are now taking up the ground that would have absorbed the water?
Yeah, I'm certainly would like to get that promulgated at some point. We are doing internal processes that not necessarily require it, but we are stating we're not going to release the permits unless you show us some sort of stormwater mitigation. I haven't been challenged on it yet, so we'll see how it goes there, but I definitely going to want at some point to have it promulgated for sure. What it looks like, I have no idea. But
Right.
It's a difficult subject.
Yeah, and this is one of the issues with the legislation to enable housing, which is all very well and good, but as you make it more dense, you need to deal more with stormwater, because the stormwater at one point was taken up by the ground that is now going to be built on for the greater density. So this is something that we haven't had to have before, but now we're going to have. We're seeing that we need to have more of it. We don't have an underground, like suburban subdivisions. It's all underground. The water all goes down into reservoirs and stuff. Well, we don't have that. So how are we going to manage that?
And then to deal with, I'm sorry to cut you off, Mark. I know you're about to say something, but the other deal is, that is an added cost to anybody who's developing too. So I mean, there's that balance you have to deal with. Are you going to go with require a 25-year storm or maybe just a 10-year storm? I don't know, at this point.
I was just going to ask if CCRPC has provided any guidance to communities under this dictate to increase density, which obviously reduces surface area, permeable surface area, that the legislature's shoving down our throats. Has anybody, let alone the legislature, been working on policies that towns can adopt to help mitigate stormwater?
Not that I know of. They haven't been proactive with it. We've been proactive out of our office only. That's really all we can do at this point. Their focus is on housing. I would say that Dan Albrecht, who is the stormwater guru down there, definitely has. Bless you. Yeah, there's not been any real outreach on that, Mark, to be honest with you. Not that I've seen.
That's just tragic.
So is that something that we would like to apply for assistance with from CCRPC, Keith? I mean, could we?
Yeah, I think if we're going to go down and promulgate these rules at some point, yeah, I'd be reaching out to them and to A&R and that. But certainly I would start with regional planning for sure.
I mean, we get a certain amount of planning from them by what we pay, but maybe we could you know, like the way we did it for the enhanced energy plan, we bought some time from them. So maybe we could buy some time to
Yeah.
have stormwater.
I mean, I will say every infill project that we've had in the town has had a stormwater issue. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
it's staring at us right in the
And,
face.
we're not the only town, you know what I
No,
mean?
no,
It blows me away that CCRPC, in response to this mandate from the legislature, hasn't put any thought or effort into trying to help towns deal with the repercussions from this. Let alone, you know, public transportation is one of it, but the other side of it is certainly stormwater mitigation. Good.
Yeah, I wouldn't be looking for CCRCP to give us a ton of help, to be honest with you. You know, their focus is on
What
what the
good are they
mandates
then?
are. What's that?
What good are they? I mean, they're coming around telling us, oh, we're going to rezone your districts and tell you need to develop in areas whether or not the town wants it or not. We're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on that, but they're not willing to do something practical like help us with stormwater. Come on.
Mark, they produce beautiful maps. Absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, they do that.
Well, you know, we can agitate for it. That's all we can do. And maybe there are other towns that are also going to be in this position, you know, towns that do not have stormwater systems in place, how we're going to plan for it, how we're going to pay for it, all of those kinds of things.
One of the requirements for the position I'm trying to fill is to have stormwater experience, stormwater and erosion and sediment experience. That is something that's a key for me. And so far, I've got 2 out of the 3 applicants that do have that experience, or at least the schooling. So, you know,
It's a
that's how
start.
high it is. That's how high it is on the list in my office. So,
Yeah. Well, we definitely need that. So anyway, so I think that's about it for the Village RC District. Everything else is okay if we make these few changes. And so the things for next time, this should be an easy thing to approve and probably sit on it until we have something else going to the select board to be approved. I'm not sure I'd want them to go through their whole procedure, although maybe they could, you know, do their whole procedure to approve it. It's kind of a lot of paperwork for these small changes. But the things that people want to think about for the next time around is, what about the frontage? What do you think about the frontage? And what do you think about having a buffering requirement? And I don't know if maybe we should think about mentioning stormwater at least. So those kinds of things. If you could think about that, then we could kind of at least say that this district also, like the VRNN and the VRNS and Jelena Court, are compatible. And we're working on the commercial district. It will take longer because there's more there. So any, oh, go ahead, Keith.
I'm sorry, and you know, we do have the focus on the town plan. I mean, this is the planning commission's charge. So, I mean, that definitely is something that needs to be brought up to the front. I don't need to remind you of that, Virginia. I know that. It's just, I did want to go ahead and put that out there. Is the focus is getting that town plan written at this point.
Yeah, so both Ian and I are working on it, and maybe Rebecca. I think Rebecca is going to be working on it as well, which is like half of the planning commission. So we're not going to be able to move too fast through any of these things. Keith is working pretty much full time on the zoning administrator right now. So, you know, we aren't going to be able to do these things too quickly. But at least if you all think about it, then we'll be able to finalize the conversation. Yeah.
Yes, just in terms of like breaking down the effort, are we
Breaking down what? Breaking down what?
breaking down the effort? Oh,
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Weird. It says my battery's at 100%, and then it just said briefly that I had lost battery power. Anyways,
I think that might be my battery somehow.
oh,
No,
yeah.
no, my battery is plugged in. It's your battery. I'm
Yeah.
plugged in. I should be all right.
Well, I saw it too, so I
Yeah,
think
me
it's,
too.
That was
I think
me.
it's
I
Keith's
thought
battery.
it was mine.
Oh, okay. I thought
I
it
was
was
like, wait a
mine.
minute, I just charged this thing.
So it's Keith, it's your battery?
Yeah, it was my battery. That was,
Oh, okay.
good.
Phantom
Yeah.
battery.
Okay.
I have the screen shared right now.
Okay.
In fact, let me get rid of
Um,
the screen.
yeah, Virginia, I was wondering if we've thought about breaking down the effort a bit with like, kind of approaching it in a project management type framework where we look at all the work that needs to be done, we break it down by chunks with milestones and dates.
Oh, yeah.
Are you talking
Have we
about
done
the
that?
town plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've
Yeah, that's
already
been
done
done.
all that.
Oh, you have, okay.
In the earlier 6 months, we've got a new timeline going. We've broken it down into the sections, who's going to be working on them. So it's all done. That is broken down.
I'd love to see a Gantt chart on that, but I think it's in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
And when you say Rebecca, did you mean me, Rebecca, or
Yeah.
another Rebecca? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do you want to work on it? I mean, Brighton is resigned from the
you can
steering
help.
committee. If you want to be on the steering committee, I mean, there are still questions. So the timeline, I guess we're moving into number 6, other business. We talk a little bit about the town plan. We've got a few minutes. We've had the workshops at the library. We have had 3 tabling events. We have a list of all the comments that have been received to date from those outreach activities. They're listed, and I can send it to the planning commission if you all want to see it as well. The comments are obviously all over the place. Some are like, tear down the town center building. Some are like, pass another bond for the town center building. I mean, it's the kind of comments that you're going to get from activities like that, to be brutally frank. They're all over the place. So now what has to happen is the steering committee, the 5 steering committee members who are active. Brighton has resigned. Adam Wood is not doing anything. He's too busy with the select board. So we have 5 steering committee people, myself, Ian, and 3 public members. We are each going to take 2 sections and incorporate whatever comments relate and whatever other information we have gathered, statutes. So over the next month and a half, we're going to come up with a draft of the technical plan, which is the narrative and the action and the goals, each one of the 5 of us, for 2 sections. The housing committee is going to write its own section. They've already submitted a draft. They have a good writer on the housing committee. They're doing a good job with making a draft for the housing section. So that's the 11th section. The 5 of us are going to do each 2 sections over the next 6 weeks to come up with a draft. We're also going to incorporate pieces from the almanac in it, and decide what maps we're going to use, decide if each section needs an appendix or not, those kinds of questions. Also, during this period of time, and Rebecca, this is something you might be interested in, we're going to decide if we want, at our next meeting next week, we're going to decide, do we want to have further outreach activities during this period? I have to tell you, they're labor intensive, the events. They take a lot of planning. They take a lot of work. They take disputing with Jay Furr about whose A-frames they are, which I just returned his to him today. Anyway, so we are supposed to, according to the Regional Planning Commission, have some meaningful outreach to underserved communities. So we have to identify those. Do we want to wait until we have a draft to bring them, which is kind of my choice, but we'll talk about it at the meeting. What other kind of outreach activities might we want? We're going to have a table. We're working on setting up a table in the planning office with comment sheets and maps so that people can drop into the town offices. We're going to have to publicize that. We've got some more Front Porch Forum posts to write. Times Inc. work can be done. But anyway, the hope is over the next 6 weeks, we will come up with a draft of the 11 sections with their narratives and actions and goals. That's the current proposal.
I can help with the outreach stuff. The next meeting for the steering committee is next Wednesday?
Right, a week from today.
Okay, and that's at the library?
Yeah, Keith,
where is
Keith, can
that?
you send her the material for it? It's at the town center.
Oh, the town center. And that's 7 to 9 as well?
That is 7 to 9, and it's either upstairs if nobody is using the meeting room, or it's downstairs in the little conference room next to the town clerk's office. And it's hybrid, but we like people to come because it works better if people come. I will not be there. I will be hybrid next week, but the conversation flows if people are there together. So,
Okay.
yeah, so if you want to come and, we can talk a little bit about outreach, but we need to get beyond outreach right now. We need to start writing if we're actually going to have a draft by the end of August. So
I think at this point, I'll just include all the planning commission members on the town plan 2026 agendas. I mean, I'll just send that
Yeah,
as part of everything
Perfect.
at this point.
thank
Make
you.
my life easier.
Well, I would argue
great.
actually, Virginia, that there needs to be some planning and writing done in parallel. In planning for these events in parallel, because as you said, they are time intensive, labor intensive. And so I think we need to kind of maybe have a POC that's doing the outreach planning. I volunteer for that, in parallel with the writing.
sure, if you want to do outreach
Okay.
planning, that would be fine. You can do outreach
Okay.
planning. I think the rest of us who have been involved right along for the last 6 months are ready to do some writing.
Okay.
And we need to do that because it's very hard to write these things and to incorporate the comments that we've already received and the new statutes. Mark,
I would just ask with so many different authors on different sections, if it'd be possible for all of you to sort of create a line item change from the pre-existing, because the pre-existing one is pretty solid. I mean, there was a lot of effort put into that, and I know you guys have put in a lot of effort this time too. But it was a pretty comprehensive, structured document, and I would just ask that people try to build and tweak on that. It's going to be a lot easier to review and provide feedback on a document that rather than starting over from scratch on everything.
well,
Yeah.
we've already mentioned to the steering committee members that we're working off the 2018 plan, but I am not going to put restrictions on how they write. This is difficult work, and if people want to write it differently and not make a red line copy of the existing, I'm not going to say no to that. I think
There was
it's asking a lot of them.
Yeah,
So,
I appreciate that. I guess if you could at least put to them the concept of some sort of level of continuity in the structure of the different sections were all very structurally similar. And if we go in, like, one section is, complete narrative and the other one is complete line items, it's going to be more disjointed. It's not going to be as
Right.
fluid and usable a document. So I guess that's
Well,
all.
the
That's all.
narratives are going to be similar, like 2 pages, approximately 2 pages. The goals and actions are going to be similar. Many of them are going to be exactly the same because we haven't had negative comments about it. I mean,
Okay.
the members of the steering committee are going to be working off the existing document. And if it looks like it's working for them, then that's fine. But they have been working on this hard. The steering committee has been very dedicated. They've been working very hard on this project. So I would like to see what they do with this writing piece. And, you know, we'll finesse it and make it flow and be one section compatible with another.
Mark,
But
I could,
it's
oh,
not
sorry.
going to be a red line of what exists. You're going to have to read them side by side if you want to see it. Most likely. I mean, we'll see. Maybe they will want to do a red line. I don't know. But I'm leaving it up to them because they're working very hard at this. So I totally appreciate their efforts and am interested to see what they come up with. So, yep, the Planning Commission kind of backed off from doing this work. So the steering committee people have been very diligent and enthusiastic. So anyway, we'll do the best we can, Mark, in terms of making it, you know, flow from one document to the next. And
Great.
we are all trying to not do more work than we have to. So, you know, if the work there is good, then that's fine. You know, we've had interesting comments.
Say something?
And you will get a list of all the comments in the packet that Keith will send you for our next planning, you know, steering committee meeting. You'll get a list of all the comments so that you can look at them
We're gonna
yourself.
get an ice hockey building?
Oh,
I'd
boy.
vote for that.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of different suggestions that, you know, like turn the town center into apartments and build a new building with a rec center
Right.
attached to it. Yeah,
Right.
well, yeah, I mean, you know, all you need is the money and that might work. I don't know. So anyway, so that is the other business that I was going to talk about. Brighton has resigned from the steering committee. Like I said, Adam Wood is not involved. A little disappointing. We thought we could get more select board input, but you know, I mean, everybody's busy. So, Ian, you have anything else you want to say about this whole business of the?
I was just gonna say to Mark's comment, I think Virginia's been pretty consistent with the steering committee throughout the process to not divert too far from the existing plan, and to kind of stick to the structure that we had with a few exceptions. So I don't think you're gonna be shocked by what you see, Mark.
Cool.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not going to be a radical departure.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's kind of what I was worried about, but cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's structured to it to some degree, maintain some sort of consistency with the pre-existing town plan. I think we'll be in great shape.
yeah.
Yep.
One decision that was made by the steering committee is to not include the visioning work that was done in 2018 because it's out of date and it adds a lot of length to the plan and doesn't really add a lot of substance. And the second thing is to take the almanac and either take the material out of there and put it into the sections or give it a whole appendix of each section a whole appendix of its own, because nobody knows what the almanac is. It's in tiny letters as just an item in the table of contents. It says almanac. Well, it's not really a traditional kind of almanac. It has very varied, if you want to not have consistency, some of the sections, like the energy section, which is data, complete data, which you must include in your town plan, the Regional Planning Commission says, that's going to have its whole own appendix that says energy appendix.
Yeah.
Things
No,
like transportation that say we have a lot of cars in Richmond and we have a lot of roads in Richmond. Next, you know, I mean, that can go, right? That doesn't add anything. So the almanac was supposed to be data
Yeah.
and additional information. Well, some sections had some and some didn't. The housing committee is suggesting they put their whole strategic plan in there. Well, we'll have to think about that, if it deserves a housing appendix all of its own. But we're going to have them marked in the table of contents in some way that you could actually find something, because nobody that we had talked to across the board knew what the almanac was or what was in it or went to it or did anything with it. You know, it's just like this thing that was out there. So We're gonna
I was
fix
looking
that.
for- I was looking for a
did like the
forecast.
fact that it had information data, and granted, it's a little dated now, and it was very disjointed, but I would love to be able to maintain that even completely as a separate appendix, but something that's resourceable and you can go to take a look at, because
Yeah, well, if it has data and actual information, then all of that data is going to have to be updated, because I went through the almanac looking at the different sections, and the ones that had actual data, the data is all out of data,
it's
outdated.
outdated, but it's better than no data.
Yeah,
So-
well, if there's real data, then it can have an appendix that should be findable, you
Yes,
know? Like
If
if we have some data about,
new data to replace the old data, great, but if you have no new data, and I understand how we may not, because that's quite an onerous assembly of information, then we at least have something that's brandedly perhaps outdated, but still has at least some value to the town plan in its essence. Maybe in the next round, in another 6 years, you and I can work on building an almanac more comprehensive and up to date.
well, I'm going to leave that up to the steering committee to decide, because they have decided for now that they don't want the almanac because they can't find it, they can't get anything out of it. They're either going to take the data or they're going to make each section have its own appendix, the ones that need it. Some of them aren't going to need it. And if the historical resources section wants to have a section called the history of Richmond as an appendix, all its own, that's findable at least, because it's in the set. Now it will be in the table of contents, history of Richmond appendix. You'll be able to find it. Now, if you want to know about the history of Richmond, who would know to go to the almanac? Nobody would know to go there. They don't go there. People don't know it exists.
That's my point. And if it were incorporated as a referenced appendix, even in its dated, antiquated, and disjointed collection, at least there is a body of information there that could have value if you're digging into the town plan.
Yeah, well, point taken, and we can discuss it with the steering committee, because they have been selected to make these decisions. So anyway, all right, anybody else?
So
What?
we still have to approve it.
Yes, you do. But we hope that you will appreciate the vast amount of work that has been put into it by this committee so far.
Adding the almanac doesn't take any effort. It just already exists.
It takes a lot of effort. It's got to all be updated if it's like it is.
You just have to reference it as
I don't think this is a fruitful discussion right now.
No,
Mark,
I think we're
Mark,
beyond-
I can guarantee with 1,000% certainty that you're gonna love it.
yeah. All right.
Yes.
I need to hear, I guess.
Yeah,
absence of
Ian is
data
our
allowed.
master of provocative lead-off statements, so we'll leave it to him to say what he wants to say. So, all right, anybody else have anything they want to talk about? Like I said, August 4th is the final hearing on the Jolena court changes that we made and we approved on the 4th of June. So that's what we've got. The only other thing that's going on right now. So
Well, that's a cute little dog you got there.
it's the Mini Cooper.
Yeah, he's mini.
Hey, Cooper.
All right, great. Well, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
Ian, seconded by Chris. Does anyone object to adjourning this meeting?
No.
Nobody objects, so the meeting is adjourned, and we will see you all in 3 weeks. We actually have a break until August the 6th. Is anybody knowing right now that they can't come to that meeting? Rebecca can't come to the meeting. So Mark, Ian, Allison, Chris, you can all come to that meeting.
I'll be there.
Okay, great. That sounds like a quorum. And we'll see you all then.
Thanks,
Stay cool.
everybody.
Talk to you then.
Yeah,
Good
me
night.
too.
I
Bye.